Welcome to another edition of the Octopus Thrower Hangout. With me today is Nick,
Hello from Chocolate Town to Hockey Town.
John,
Hi, something funny.
Newbie, and Jack.
I've got nothing to say. Hey.
And Christina.
Hello, John stole mine, so just don't continue.
And as always, I'm Peter. Let's get right into this. Playoffs over, season's over. Were you disappointed in the playoff performance by the Red Wings, John?
Yes and no. It's always kind of embarrassing when you only end up winning one game, and in a lot of those games that the Red Wings were playing, they didn't look particularly impressive. But we're not Tampa Bay getting swept, so it's something.
That is true. We didn't get swept. We won the first game. And actually, I looked into it because I was talking about how game ones were meaningless. And I looked into the last 3 years, and 80% of the time teams won game one and lost game two, they won the series. So apparently I don't know what I'm talking about.
Well, as long as you're not making Mike Vernon out to be an average goaltender, I think you'll be okay.
That's true.
I guess it all comes down to what you mean by the word disappointed. I mean, obviously, I'm sad that the Red Wings lost in the first round, and it would have been great for them to knock off the Bruins and kind of take up everybody's expectations. But, I mean, I picked the Bruins to win, so I can't say that I was, shocked that happened.
Jack, you got anything?
I was really pulling for us to win. I thought we had a decent chance after the regular season, but, the playoffs aren't always how the regular season panned out. And we looked a lot better than the scores ended up showing. I mean, there were definitely some chances we could have stole a couple of those games, but in the end, we lost a 2-goal lead. And could have been worse. Could have been Tampa, I guess.
Yeah, I think winning game one and winning it the way we did with Datsuk scoring with 3 minutes to go kind of made us all feel really good about our chances, and then that team didn't really seem to show up again. They showed up for the first two periods of game four and then just kind of disappeared again. But disappointing, yes. It's not as bad as the loss to Nashville a couple years ago where we only played 5 games, but I'm just happy we made the playoffs like we do every year.
Yes, that is 23 straight. Babcock put some of the onus on the loss with having younger players on the team. 7 players who are 25 or younger, and about 6 or 7 of them, this was either their first NHL playoff experience or second. Do you think that did affect them in the first round? John?
Oh, we're still on me? Okay. Yes and no. I feel like if they had drawn someone like maybe the Blue Jackets or the Penguins or even the Lightning, then it wouldn't have factored in quite as much. But given that they were going up against a team like the Bruins, who a lot of their players have stayed together for a while through several playoff runs, that probably had a really big effect on them.
Yeah.
Well, I don't see how that. Of course, he's going to say that the inexperience hurt them. All you need to do is look at the kid line and see that they combined for a whopping total of 0 points. And we didn't get a lot of help from the young players like we did during the regular season. So, we didn't know. We talked about that during the last hangout. Maybe the young players would step up. Maybe they wouldn't realize the magnitude of the situation. But they didn't, and so I think it's very fair for him to say that inexperience hurt the team.
Yeah, I understand that as well. I mean, it's tough when you have a bunch of young kids who've never played in the playoffs or their playoff experience is very limited, and you're going into a grind which is completely different than the regular season. It's just a different animal, and there's a whole bunch of stuff at stake that maybe they don't really realize, or maybe they're putting too much pressure on themselves, and therefore, making it more difficult. Jack and Christina have anything to add?
I feel like they were almost trying too hard at some points, like trying to be better than what they were. I mean, yeah, they're inexperienced, but I mean, you only gain experience by playing in the playoffs, and at least they got 5 games under their belt. So I do agree with Babcock, but I don't know. We'll see how they do next time because I don't think the streak's ending anytime soon. I can hope, right?
I think you're on the right track. Talking about Babcock, let's go into the fact that he's Jack Adams nominee, along with Patrick Waugh and of the Avalanche and John Cooper of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Is this his year, or is Cooper or Waugh going to take it away from him? Let's start with you, Christina.
I have this sinking feeling in my stomach that Patrick Waugh is going to beat him, and then the whole feud is just going to start all over again with us and Colorado. That's just my thought. Worst case scenario. I think he has a good chance. I really hope he wins. I think it's going to be very close. I'll be interested to see the results of the voting after they announce what happens.
So what you're saying is we need to hire Mike Vernon or Chris Osgood and then just as our head coach and just battle them?
Well, I don't think we need to get rid of Babcock like everybody has apparently been saying we need to. I'm not even going to go down that path. Continue on with someone else, please.
Jack, how about you?
Yeah, I think it's really coming down to between Waugh and Babcock. But Waugh, I feel, has the best chance to win just because of the dramatic change that happened between these 2 seasons. You know, they went from a bottom 3 team to a top 3 team out of nowhere. So just because such a big difference has been made, I just feel Babs will get snubbed again, maybe.
Yeah, it's really tough too for Babcock, I think, because the Red Wings are a perennial playoff team, and I think as fans of the team, we understand what a great job he did with this year's team and all the injuries and all the adversity. But I think from people on the outside looking in, they might not appreciate it quite as much. Plus, he didn't revolutionize pulling your goalie with like 10 minutes left in the game like Waugh did. So, no, there's that.
I honestly haven't put too much thought into it just because the Jack Adams doesn't seem that important to me. They've been saying for years that Mike Babcock's one of the best coaches in the league and deserves a little bit of recognition for it. And I'd be kind of upset if he wasn't a finalist. But for Mike Babcock to go through what he went through this year with this many injuries and still end up making the playoffs is impressive. For John Cooper to do what he did this year without Stamkos for half the year, then trading away St. Louis, is also impressive. For Patrick Waugh to take the team that was picking first overall and have them not just getting into the playoffs but winning their division is also impressive. So I'm just kind of happy that he was named a finalist. That's a little bit of recognition of how good of a job that he does. And you can make an argument for any one of the 3, really. There's no real clear front runner for the Jack Adams this year.
Yeah, I agree. There really is a front runner, and it's really, I mean, it's hard not to give Babcock the Jack. He's been so good for so long. He won the Olympic gold again this year. He coached most of the season without Datsuk or Zetterberg in the lineup at times. Each only played about half the amount of games. And, I mean, you have young kids like Riley Sheahan coming into the lineup, and Yurko and Nyquist, who probably should have been in the NHL last year, or at the beginning of the season. And, I mean, these guys all stepped up and played very well, and it has a lot to do with the way he coached the team. Now, will he get the Jack Adams or not? I don't know. It's easy to give it to Patrick Waugh because his team came from the bottom of the rungs last season and now, you know, one of the top teams in the NHL. But at the same time, that team was much better than their standings looked last year. They didn't play well. They really underachieved last season. They went and got a number 1 player in the draft, and look, that's what it does to your team.
So could you say they started at the bottom, now Roy here?
Oh God, I was this close. I was too close to saying like they're starting at the bottom, now they're at here, and I was like, no, I'm not saying that. That's not happening. Of course, you have to bring it up. But yeah, I mean, if this isn't Bab's year, I don't know when he ever gets a Jack Adams. It might be when he's unfortunately no longer part of the Red Wings organization, and hopefully that's many years down the road.
Although apparently, from what Helene St. James says, maybe sooner than later.
Let's just not even get into that. Let's move on to grading the players on the season. Who was your top player and who was your bottom player? Who's getting the A and who's getting the F?
Oh, I get to start with this one. And if you know anything about me, you already know that I'm going to give an A+, and probably extra credit to Gustav Nyquist, our Lord and Savior. So I think Nyquist definitely. The lowest grade I would give to Weiss, except that he hardly even played, so he gets more of like an incomplete, I would say. Like he needs, you can't even grade him. People I was disappointed with, I think Johan Franzen for a big chunk of the season, and Dan Cleary, a favorite Octopus Thrower whipping boy for sure. One guy I think that probably deserves a better grade than some people might give him is Nicholas Kronwall, because he, did his thing. There were also injuries on the blue line as well. It wasn't all just forward. So I would give him a good grade as well.
John, how about you?
I really wanted to pick one defenseman that stood out, and I've seen how much Dan DeKeyser stepped forward this year. I was really impressed with that. Darren Helm, especially, I was really happy with, considering how little he's played this year. I feel like expectations were set a lot lower for him, and he kind of came back as the same Darren Helm that we know and love if we can remember him playing. So I was really happy with Darren Helm as well. As far as falling short of expectations or lower grades, well, there's Bertuzzi, Cleary, Samuelson. It's really easy to go through a lot of them. But as far as people actually staying with the team, I'm still pretty upset at Brendan Smith for trying to be a forward so much that they literally dressed him as a forward. So you're a defenseman for a reason, bud. Let's tone it back a little.
The funny thing about that was, I think after they did that, he became much better as a defenseman for the rest of the season.
He did.
That's what I was going to say.
Jack, what are your grades? Who gets the top mark and who gets the lowest mark?
I got to give the A+ to Nyquist like everybody else. I mean, he basically saved the season, so, he's a lock for that. But I am going to be bold, and I don't know if you're going to like this. I'm going to give the low grade to Howard. That horrible start to the season really underperformed, and we were only a couple points out of playing a much lesser team than Boston in the first round. And then, who knows, we could have had, Zetterberg going in deeper, and then Eriksson coming back maybe in the second round. So this could have been a lot deeper of a playoff run than what happened.
It would have been nice if he could have won a shootout every now and then.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's never been good in the shootouts. I think everyone knows that. But for some reason, he's pretty good at penalty shots. Why that is, I don't know.
It's a mentality.
Christina, what are your picks?
I was going to pick Nyquist, obviously, but I think I will pick Nicholas Kronwall instead, because with Zetterberg going down, he really stepped up as the team leader, and it was in such a subtle way that you almost didn't notice it. But a lot of the post-game interviews with players would mention Kronwall just kind of being there and doing his thing and keeping everybody calm, which is really good to see that someone else somewhere down the pipeline can take over for Zetterberg. Granted, he still has 12 years left on his contract, so we don't have to worry about that yet. As for the worst player, I'm going to pick Samuelson because I just really hate him. Yeah, Samuelson. I mean, disappointing to me is I would have to say Franzen. I mean, I am Franzen Muth, so I know and I talk about how much he's capable of and his potential, constantly his potential, and he never proves me right. And this year he was good and he got hot, and then he did absolutely nothing. So it's very disappointing, and it's very disheartening when I log on to my Twitter and my feed is all buy out Franzen, buy out Franzen, buy out Franzen, because he's still, for the price that we have him at, he's a decent player. It's just frustrating how streaky he is.
Yeah,
I'll stop there.
In the last 20 games of the season, 7 points isn't going to cut it for him.
No.
And I think that, but if you actually look back on the season, he had 41 points in 56 games. I mean, that's a pretty good season. Like, in a full year, that's around 50, 60 points. But it's just the streakiness that gets them, and it costs people to either overreact or realize that, you know, he's not going to be this level when his contract ends when he's 40.
How many of those points are just because of who he's playing with? I mean, you saw that Pavel Datsyuk goal in Game 1 against Boston came from a horrible, horrible pass from Franzen. And
he didn't deserve that assist.
It was all the way they set it up.
It essentially just turned into something because Pavel Datsyuk's Pavel Datsyuk. So I wonder if he would be putting up 50 points in the year if he had been on a third or second line the whole time, you know?
Yeah, that's very true. The other thing about Cromwell is after when Zetterberg was out, I think it was Brendan Smith after the game said, "our captain," in reference to Cromwell. Yeah. So, I mean, he was a huge part of the Red Wings when Zetterberg went down. And even before Zetterberg went down, he's that leader on the defense. In the defensive zone, and he's the guy all the defensemen turn to. So he's a big part of that locker room, and I agree with giving him a high rank. Everyone already knows my ranks. I put them out what will be yesterday, so you can just go look that up. I'll put that in the comments or description, whatever. And you can look at my ranks of the full teams. Let's go with the coaching staff ranks. Babcock, Rennie, Peters. What are you giving these guys, Nick?
Well, I mean, you know, following the team from afar as I do, I'm probably not the best person to answer this question in detail. But I will say, you know, kind of sitting off of our conversation about who should win the Jack Adams, that I think in general that the coaching staff did a really good job this year under very difficult circumstances.
Okay, John?
I honestly don't follow any of the practices or interviews close enough to know the impact that the assistant coaches are having. Although I will say one thing that really stuck out this year was a video I saw on Twitter where they're talking to Babcock before a game and they're asking him why Yurko wasn't in the lineup, I think it was, and like maybe Cleary was in, but they're asking why Yurko was still down in Grand Rapids. And rather than say anything about any of the veterans, he just said, "I don't know. That's a really excellent question. I wish I had an answer." Just kind of said it in a way that you could tell he was full of it. He knew exactly why. He just didn't feel like saying. But it makes me wonder if there's any conflicts with him and Ken Holland as far as the construction of the roster went. In which case, if he was playing with a roster that he didn't want to have and he still was able to pull this off, then that's an even bigger plus to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Jack, how about you?
Well, Babcock was, voted for Jack Adams, so I'm pleased with him. Really, the only other problem I had was the power play wasn't amazing this year. Things didn't seem to change as the year progressed, so maybe Tom Rennie could have done something different with the power play. But, I don't follow much either.
No, that's a good one. Christina?
He took my point. I was going to talk about the power play. Tom Rennie definitely needs to be doing something different with the power play. Penalty kill was decent. Penalty kill kind of went all over the place, especially in the playoffs. But I have no problems with Babcock. I think he did a phenomenal job, but something has to change with the power play for sure. And I don't know where that exactly falls with what the coaches want to do in the future.
Yeah, the power play was one of the worst in the league, and even the penalty kill wasn't that great. It was about middle of the road. Bill Peters does the defense, so I think you can say that he probably didn't have the best coaching season with all the problems that they had with Kindle or Lashoff or Brendan Smith or Kyle Quincy at the beginning of the season. So maybe he needs to step it up and figure out the best system for these guys to go into. But I think Babcock did a great job for the most part on offense, which is Rennie's side, as well as special teams. I think our offense kind of lacked a lot. 49 points as the leading scorer for the Red Wings was the lowest since like the 60s. And you're not going to, I mean, you're lucky to make the playoffs with a leading score of under 50 points. So something needs to change on the offense as well, because they're leaning a lot on Zetterberg and Datsuk, and they're nearing the end of their careers, and Datsuk has knee problems, although he should be healthy for next season, and along with Zetterberg in his back. But you have to be able to get some production elsewhere, and I think it really boosted the Red Wings when that third line, kid line, started scoring, and Nyquist started scoring as well. So now we're done with that. Let's look into next season. Who needs to step up for the Detroit Red Wings? Jack?
Well, probably the biggest person's got to be Weiss. I guess it's a little unfair to judge him too much because he did start off the season with a hernia, didn't tell anybody. So, I don't know, he hasn't played a full season in, I don't even know, 2 years, something like that. So, we just got to hope that he's going to be able to fill a third line, maybe center position, third or fourth. I don't know where he's going to be next year, but he's got to do something, hopefully.
John?
I'd like to see more out of Riley Sheehan in the sense that he ended the year playing really well in that Boston series. I think at one point his Corsi rating was at 70 for one game there, and he did a pretty good job going up against Jerome McGinley's line. So if we can continue to see performance like that out of Riley Sheehan, then I think that'll be a real good pickup for Detroit.
How about you, Christina?
I would also say Weiss, but more for the fact that if he could just stay healthy even for like a 30-game stretch before going down, that would be enjoyable. Any of the young guns, like I would agree with Sheehan, he's phenomenal. He's really good at setting up the other guys on his line, like making a play, and you don't really notice it until you see replays. It's like, oh, that was a really good pass to the front of the net. Oh, look, it resulted in a goal. So yeah, I would say Weiss, definitely for sure.
Nick?
That leaves me. Well, going last, people take all of the obvious answers. Maybe the training staff needs to step it up so people don't get hurt as often. Maybe that's not fair to say, but it's just what's in my mind after this season. And also, seeing what Torrey Krug and Dougie Hamilton and some of these other guys did in the Bruins series, it would be nice to get some more offense from the blue line. And I'm not so sure exactly where that comes from, but I mean, the Bruins just had a really dynamic defense that seemed to know when to jump up in the play, when to help out with the attack, and that's something that I don't feel like Detroit had enough of during at any point in the season, really.
Yeah, the defense did have troubles. The craziest part is Jakob Kindl I believe he had 19 points in about 50 games, which is pretty good for a defenseman, but he was so terrible defensively that it ended up costing the Red Wings more points than he was able to give them. And so he needs to do something on the defensive end to get that game going. Maybe we can mash him and Brian Lashoff together to make a super defenseman. Because where Lashoff needs work is on the offensive side of the zone. So maybe we get a device together, we push those two together, and we have a very good second, third line defenseman there.
So the same device we're using to take genetic material from Steve Yzerman and Nick Lidstrom, its next project is going to be Kindle and Lashoff.
I think we have to do Kindle and Lashoff first, because the Yzerman Lidstrom stuff needs time to get together and incubate.
Well, Lidstrom does have sons, and Yzerman does have daughters. So
That's what I meant by incubate.
Their offspring can be the savior down the road. As where Lashoff and Kindle is probably more of a now solution.
Right. We need help now. That's the problem. We don't need help in 18 years.
Well, the children don't come off trees anymore, Peter. What can I say?
I thought the stork delivered them. Come on.
I'm so confused right now.
As for my player who has to step up next year, it'd be Howard. He had 21 wins this season, the same he had last year in a shortened season, where he played fewer games, and he posted his second worst goals against average and save percentage. And the only season he was worse in was his second year in the NHL, where most players have a sophomore slump. So he definitely needs to turn it up next year. It wasn't a good start to his new contract, which this was his first year. And we have 5 more years, and hopefully he'll be able to step it up and be the goaltender that is worth the money that they're paying him right now.
Howard did spend a lot of the year injured, to be fair to him. So when they say that this is his lowest number of wins since his second year in the league, it's like, well, yeah, but he only played 75% of the year healthy, if that. So I think he deserves a little bit of slack with that.
This is his worst from last year. He actually played 15 more games this year than he did last year, and he had the same amount of wins.
Oh, wow. But I did an article about goalie stats a few months back, where I basically made the argument that wins and goals against average is more of is more indicative of how the team does with him than how the individual goalie does. But with save percentage, you can't make that argument so much, and there was a definite decrease in that.
Yeah, I agree. The team probably wasn't its best this year, and it showed. But I mean, Gustafsson was able to post his second best winning season. He was one win behind his 17, which is max from 2 years ago, and I think he played 10 or 12 more games that season. So somehow Gustafsson played really well, and Howard played not very well. So I'm just saying he needs to step it up next year and make it worth the money that the Red Wings are paying him. So let's move on from that to talk about a team that's still in the playoffs, and the Grand Rapids Griffins. They won their first series against Abbotsford Heat in 4 games. They were unable to sweep them, but move on to the next round to face the Texas Stars. The first game is Thursday at 7:30, and the Texas Stars, I believe, are the best team in the Western Conference. So this will be a tough game for the Griffins, but Pulkkinen has 5 points so far, and Sheahan and Yurko add another 2. Mrazek is playing extremely well. He has goals against average of 1.72 and a save percentage of .937. So he's been a great goaltender for I almost said the Red Wings. For the Griffins so far in the playoffs. What do you think the Griffins are going to be able to do here?
You want my prediction?
Yeah, just
Pain.
anything.
Anytime I get a chance to use that Rocky line, I have to slip it in. Yeah, I haven't been able to keep track so much with them, but the one big thing that I will say is I was worried last year when Detroit got eliminated. They sent down DeKaiser and Nyquist and a few other guys, and I thought it would really throw off the team chemistry that they had been building for so long in the AHL, and it really didn't. And if anything, it helped them win the Calder Cup faster. So knowing that they're getting all these reinforcements here is only going to help the Griffins' chances.
Nick?
No, he pretty much summed it up. I mean, they should know by now how to handle people coming and going because it happened all year, and they have last year's run to build on. So I like their chances.
You aren't going to make a trip to Wilkes-Barre or Scranton, are you there, Nick?
I wasn't planning on it, but you just put that idea in my head, so...
Jack, do you have any comments about the Griffins?
I just lagged out for a second. I don't know if anyone noticed, so I hope I didn't miss anything I'm about to say. But, can you guys see me right now?
No, you're just a floating blue head, but you're okay. Just go ahead.
Okay. All right. Anyways, I didn't follow the Griffins much this year. But I think they did have a decent season this year. They were still a pretty winning team, even though they lost half their star players to the NHL. And bringing them back, just I would hope would make them only better. So let's hope for a repeat.
Yeah. Christina, anything to add about the Griffins?
No, pretty much what Jack said. I mean, half of their team is the Detroit Red Wings, so they should be in pretty good shape.
I agree, and then you have a guy like Timo Pulkkinen, who has one of the hardest shots in the AHL on your roster as well. So this should be a good team. They should be able to challenge the Texas Stars very well in this series and should be able to make it onto the next round, if not the Calder Cup Finals. So let's move on from one playoffs to another playoff. NHL playoffs, Red Wings are out, as we all know. It's very sad. Who do you think is going to make it to the Eastern Conference Final, or who do you think is going to make it to the NHL playoff finals out of the East and the West, and who's going to win the Cup?
You want my prediction?
Yes.
I had picked the Kings to come out of the West. For one reason or another, everything added together. The way they added Jeff Carter in 2012 or 2011 rather, and that really seemed to help them. And then throwing Gaborik into the mix seemed to really help out as well. Jonathan Quick turning into Jonathan Quick. I just like the Kings' chances, and I don't think Chicago can or should repeat this year. And coming out of the East, even though Boston's the real easy pick, there's something about the Rangers that was really hard to pin down that I really liked. So I had the Kings and the Rangers meeting in the finals, with the Kings taking it in 6.
Okay, Christina, how about you?
Well, when I was watching hockey, I think it was game 1 at my Canadian friend's house, he had us do the brackets, which I've never actually filled out a bracket before. I just do it round by round. And I ended up apparently picking the Rangers to win it all, and I believe it was against Chicago. And Marc-Andre Fleury is going to suck at some point again. I mean, he can't be doing back-to-back shutouts games in a row when he was scored on twice in overtime a couple games ago. So I think the Rangers still have a good chance against Pittsburgh. Montreal looks pretty good as well, but I think Chicago is still, unfortunately, a force to be reckoned with. So I think they'll definitely be in the finals again. But I'd say the Rangers.
Jack?
Well, my picks in my bracket were Anaheim over Detroit in the final, so I don't really know what I was thinking there. But I really think a Chicago and Boston matchup's coming again, unfortunately. Although I would really like to see LA and Montreal. That's what I want Montreal to win it all. But I think Quick's gonna 5 save percentage since losing those first 3 games, so he's on fire. And Kopitar has like 14 points, so they're going to be a really dangerous team in the West.
Yeah. Nick, how about you?
I'm actually going to go one better on Jack and say that is the finals I'm predicting. I'm going to say Montreal and LA, rematch of the 93 finals. But I'm going to pick Montreal to win, too. It would be a great story just because only one Canadian team even made the playoffs. And so for them to make it all the way through would be, that would be a lot of fun for our friends in the North. And hopefully people won't riot too much if that happens.
It would be kind of nice when they do their Stanley Cup DVD to have all the Boston racism forever immortalized on that. So.
Oh, great. I don't know about that part.
I found my girlfriend's bracket. She actually printed it out, and she had the Lightning going to the Stanley Cup Finals. And after they got swept, she just wrote a bunch of curse words all over it.
Well, I found my brother's bracket at our friend's house, and he had the San Jose Sharks winning it all. So.
Okay, I'm actually going to agree with Nick. I think it's going to be LA Montreal. I think that Montreal can best the Bruins. I think they have it in them. And then whoever comes out of the Pittsburgh-New York series is going to be pretty beat up. And Montreal has, Vanek and a couple guys who can really do some damage on the offensive side of the zone. And they have PK Subban on the back end with Markov and Emlyn who can really shut you down. So I'm going to go with them. And it's hard to pick against LA. They came back from being down 3-0 to San Jose to win the series. They're playing really well against Anaheim. So I think that's my team as well. I think I'm going LA and Montreal with Montreal winning because it's been too long since a Canadian team won a cup. So I'm going to throw you a bone, Canada.
Can I just add, too, that if it ends up being Anaheim and Pittsburgh, I will not be watching any games of that final.
Why? There'll be a lot of broken sticks and people wanting referees.
Cheap shots and spearing.
Pittsburgh and go see it live. Since I apparently have you pegged into any game that happens in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I like the fact that you have confidence in me and the freedom in my schedule to just travel all over the state to watch hockey. I wish that were actually the case.
Hey, yesterday I actually looked up where Grand Rapids was and found out it was 4.5 hours away. So, unless the Griffins get a home game on a Saturday, I can't really make it. But the point is, you mentioned Thomas Vanek being with Montreal, Peter, and he's going to be a UFA here in the summer, and Detroit is going to have some cap space to work with. So I'm just saying on that aspect as well.
I think we're going to look into him and a bunch of other UFAs at the end of the month, early June. So keep your eyes peeled for that.
Save it for the next hangout.
Exactly. That's what we're doing. We're saving all the UFAs and talk about all the RFAs in the next hangout, and hopefully only a couple of weeks. So we should be good to go by then. Does anyone have any last comments to make?
I found one of those Susan B. Anthony dollars just now, and I think that's pretty neat. I don't know why it's in my house, but hey.
I should have said hockey-related comments.
See, you always forget to qualify it.
Oh. Okay, well we're gonna wrap this up so Christina and Nick can go watch Marvels of S.H.I.E.L.D. or whatever it's called.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Come
Agents of
on,
S.H.I.E.L.D.
man.
Yeah.
Okay, so on behalf of the Octopus Thrower crew, my name's Peter Fish. Have a great day.
Good night, Internet.